What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Headlines. I know it's been a little bit, had to take a little bit of a break, everyday life stuff, but you're not here for that. You're here for the headlines. I want to say thank you for tuning in to the headlines. It's a weekly gaming news video show you can find right here on YouTube. You can also go to my website, bleepblooppod.com. That's BLEEP BLOOPPOD.com, where you can check all the latest and greatest videos, content, updates, what have you. Every Monday is a new podcast episode, audio, all podcast platforms. And if you want to just enjoy some gaming content or some short form content, then subscribe right here to the channel. And for any update overall, regardless, pertaining to the brand, other content that I may push out, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All right, so we got 7 good stories today. We're not going to hesitate. Let's go. So this first story that we got is from IGN, from Wesley Yin Poole. Cal Kestis actor in the process of making Star Wars Jedi 3. A third game in the Star Wars Jedi series is in the works, the actor behind its protagonist has confirmed. Respawn's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order launched in 2019 to critical and commercial acclaim, with more than 20 million players and over 10 million copies sold. It spawned a sequel, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which launched in April 2023. The series stars young Jedi Knight Cal Kestis, who fights against the Galactic Empire in a story set in the years after Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. We're working on the third, Monaghan said. Quote, we're in the process of doing it right now. That's a big undertaking and there have been some conversations so far. Hopefully when all things are said and done, we'll be able to go in and make something really cool for you guys again. So bottom line is they're making a third one in this series. So I would assume this is probably going to be the last one to close out this storyline of this adventure, this protagonist, and what this universe has to offer. I think it's also a great segue for a new story kind of transitioning into when Star Wars Outlaws releases. It gives you a different look of the Star Wars universe. So I think that's a good look. Be interested to see what happens, what comes of it, and kind of summarize and close out the series as a whole. I personally haven't played really much of any of this series. I mean, I dove into the first one a little bit, but it really just wasn't my forte. However, I know there are a lot of fans out there, and I thought that this was important because, like I said, it closes out the trilogy. So more to follow as it gets closer. This next story is from GameSpot, and this is from Evan Campbell. A GTA 5 style, quote, living world is a goal for Dragon's Dogma 2. Director Hideki Itsuno mentions Rockstar's title as one source of inspiration for the action RPG sequel. With over a decade separating Dragon's Dogma 2 from the original, director Hideki Itsuno was asked about what games have inspired him during all this time. Most importantly, he wants to build off the first games in the Universe franchise, but if push came to shove, he name-checked one of the biggest games of all time, Grand Theft Auto 5. Speaking with VGC, Itsuno talked about his goals and inspirations for Dragon's Dogma 2. Quote, we mostly just wanted to take things that we couldn't achieve in Dragon's Dogma at the time it came out in 2012, whether it be from just lack of time or pushing the limits of the hardware that was around at that time, the director said. Though if Itsuno, quote, had to pick one other game, he pointed to GTA 5. Quote, I kind of admired how they were able to create a world in which it really felt like the NPCs were going about their lives independently of the player, he said. All kinds of interesting emergent behavior could happen whenever you were exploring the city, and all kinds of weird accidents felt like it would happen whether you were there or not. For somebody that hasn't played Dragon's Dogma, I think that this isn't a bad direction, because I think what you're able to do is create a living universe that can stand the test of time. And the case study for that would be Grand Theft Auto 5. I mean, if you look at when it came out to the fact that it's still relevant to this day, really shows the intuitive thinking of the developers. How do we take a world that we want people to continue to live in. And I think a big part of that would have to be because of the RP world, being able to mod certain aspects of the environment and people playing characters that have these lives, and communities thrive, to where now, as we get close to GTA 6, it's almost like this is somewhat set a precedence for games of this same caliber. So to be able to have that type of environment, I think in a world like Dragon's Dogma, I think that's great, because it takes away a realistic environment and gives you a fantasy world to really live in and thrive. That's different from games such as, like, your Final Fantasy 14s or your World of Warcrafts, which still have a thriving online community, but they don't feel like really lived in worlds. I mean, this is just from somebody from the outside looking in, only speculating. But I think it's really cool and really interesting. And I think when you look at graphically, from a graphical standpoint, I think it allows people the desire to immerse themselves into this world and not just play it one time, but maybe jump into an RP type of role to really continue playing and exploring that world and creating new lives and adventures. So I think that's just really cool. Our third story comes to us from PC Gamer. Capcom stirs the pot saying game prices are too low, by Fraser Brown. At TGS Tokyo Game Show last week, Capcom president and CESA chairman Horiho Sugimoto reignited everyone's favorite discourse subject, the price of games. As Nikkei via Switch Soku reports, Sugimoto was discussing the topic of rising development costs, where he claimed that, quote, game prices are too low. While games from a lot of publishers have become more expensive in recent years, it's worth noting that Capcom has not followed this trend. For instance, Street Fighter launched at $60 in June, whereas competitor Mortal Kombat was set you back $70. Meanwhile, games in general have not risen much since the beginning of the hobby, despite being considerably more expensive to make. One convincing way I've seen people make this point is by sharing brochures from Toys R Us and other retailers from the 90s, sometimes transposing the inflation-adjusted costs onto those old flyers to remind us that some of us were paying a contemporary $142 US in '95 to play Donkey Kong Country, or $124 for Mortal Kombat. Without going further into the article, what I think is this. I think, okay, while higher prices, the justification would be because of development costs, then the question has to be asked, why do publishers, developers significantly cut their workforce continuously? Because if the gaming industry is generating a lot of money and development costs are going up, wouldn't you want to sustain your workforce that has the experience and has the credentials to push out quality products to justify that market price? I would assume so. I mean, for somebody that's on the outside looking in, with most of these things, I have to ask that. On one hand, you say we need more money because development costs are high. But on the other hand, we're saying we can't sustain this workforce because we didn't return a higher profit, so we have to cut our workforce. I would say to that is this. Indie developers have been proving time and time again that you don't need a big, robust workforce to create amazing games. Hellblade. I mean, that was one of them, right? There's just, there's a lot of indie games out there that prove that they can do it. So I think that, yeah, you want the workforce that creates a quality product. But if you are spending more than you are returning, maybe we need to relook our marketing strategies as opposed to our development costs. We're going to cut our workforce for development, but charge more money because we overspent on marketing. I don't know. This is all speculative. I'm just speculating here. I don't know. I don't know these things. Like I said, I'm on the outside looking in, but it just doesn't make sense to me, you know? Now, and even with the evolution of the next take-home console systems, the price is relative to the hardware. If I'm paying $80, $90 for a game, that game better be top tier, top of the line. And if my system can only produce the results that the hardware is capable of producing, it doesn't matter how much quality actually went into the game, because it's only going to push out at that level. Now, some people say, well, okay, what about if you have a PC? It's still the same thing. You could have a high-end $5,000 gaming PC. You're going to get those quality results. But what if a studio charges you $70 to $80 to $90 for a game, and it performs worse than a $40, $50 game? But then you get a $30 game that performs better than your $80 game. So where are the checks and balances for this? So for me personally, I feel like if you're going to bring up the development as the issue, maybe some of these developers or these publishers should really look at how much staff are you really bringing on to do some shading, to do some environments, to do some sound, when there's smaller studios that are doing it at a higher level or at the same level. I don't know, just on the outside. This next story is from Games Radar. This is from Concerin. Dying Light 2 roadmap reveals crossovers with For Honor, Vampire the Masquerade, and more. Developer Techland has shared a content roadmap detailing everything coming to the open world zombie smash 'em up Dying Light 2. Techland's roadmap outlines the new content coming this autumn and winter, and while it doesn't divulge anything too specific, there are some quite exciting teases ahead. Shared on the website, once known as Twitter, still is if you look at the web address, the studio revealed that new missions, co-op missions, board quests, and anomalies are coming to Dying Light 2. That's all in addition to more weapons, enemy variants, mod support, and a new difficulty option called Nightmare. There's also the mention of something called Tower Raid, which hopefully uses the game's very fun parkour moves. The more exciting additions are the upcoming events though. One planned event near Halloween will cross Dying Light 2 over with Vampire the Masquerade, which might make the wait for a Bloodline sequel a little more bearable. The second crossover event coming this winter is a joint effort with Ubisoft's multiplayer battle For Honor. I'm imagining medieval equipment thrown into the zombie apocalypse. I'm excited for this because if you watch my channel, you know that I've started a series called 500 Days in Dying Light 2. Now, the reason I did this series is, to give a little bit of context, is the developer said that there's about 500 hours worth of content within the game already, or that's what they have and they want to deliver. So I decided, okay, I want to push that envelope. I want to see if that is the case. I want to experience, I want to immerse myself in this world. So that's what I started to do. So to be able to see more content coming out, that in my head raises the question, is there even more than 500 hours? Is this part of the 500 hours? And in any case, to me, it doesn't really matter because I'm still excited that there's new content being added to this environment, to this game that I'm already enjoying. So I'm really looking forward to this. By the way, if you want to watch that video series, every Monday on the YouTube channel, new episode drops. New episode tomorrow at the time of this video. So in any case, you know, it'll just be really cool. And I think that crossover that they talked about with Vampire the Masquerade, you know, kind of like gearing up for a Bloodline sequel, I think that's really cool because that's a game that I really want to dive into as well. So more to follow on this. May do a video talking about the roadmap. Stay tuned to the channel, like and subscribe, click that notification bell to find out. This next story is from Game Informer. Alex Van Aken wrote it. PlayStation head Jim Ryan leaving Sony next spring. PlayStation head Jim Ryan is leaving the company, according to a press release from Sony Interactive Entertainment. Ryan has served as president and CEO since his appointment in 2018. Ryan's tenure at Sony spans nearly 30 years, during which he's held numerous leadership roles, including serving as the head of Sony Europe after former SIEE president Andrew House passed the torch in 2011. Why is Jim Ryan leaving Sony? Quote, I found it increasingly difficult to reconcile living in Europe and working in North America, Ryan said in the press release. I will leave having been privileged to work on products that have touched millions of lives across the world. PlayStation will always be a part of my life, and I feel more optimistic than ever about the future of SIE. I want to thank Yoshida-san for placing so much trust in me and being an incredibly sensitive and supportive leader. 30 years with a company and putting that much blood, sweat, and tears into something you are passionate about. I mean, I commend him. I commend him for putting that much work in. You know, you put 30 years in, you have earned the right to just go ahead, pump the brakes, pull over, and say, you know what? I'm good. I'm gonna ride off into the sunset. I think it's great. I think as a representation of what Sony brought to the table, I think just from what I saw, I think Mr. Jim Ryan did a great job. Look forward to seeing, you know, what else he kind of does in his off time, how he still is a voice of the industry, and hopefully the next person that comes in can, you know, do equally as good of a job, if not better. So wish him nothing but the best. But I think it's worth noting that a true leader of the gaming industry is hanging it up, and we should commend that. So this next story is from gamesindustry.biz. Ubisoft CEO, streaming will change gaming just as Netflix has for TV and film. This is written by Jeffrey Rousseau. Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot, and I apologize if I'm butchering these names, says that streaming will change the games industry similar to how Netflix shifted the TV and film business sector. In an interview with the Financial Times, the executive explained that is why the firm penned a deal for the cloud gaming rights for all Activision Blizzard games. Quote, when Netflix first said it was going to go into streaming, their shares fell a lot, and they were widely criticized, said the Ubisoft executive. Quote, we strongly believe in the next 5 to 10 years, many games will be streamed and will also be produced in the cloud. That's what pushed us to go forward with the Microsoft deal. Guillemot also said that new mobile devices such as the iPhone 15 release will help expand the game's firm's clouding gaming presence outside Europe and the US. Ubisoft's deal will also allow it to commercialize and license the cloud gaming version of any Activision Blizzard titles over the next 15 years. Cloud gaming. I think that if you were to say this 5 years ago, yeah, eventually, right? The technology's just not there. But when you look at the size of games and the amount of space they take on a piece of hardware, it's easier to just play it directly from a cloud system, especially if it's seamless, right? I mean, if we can watch movies that don't buffer, that you don't gotta let render through 50% of it before you watch it, you can just click play and go. I think that it's only a matter of time before gaming does get there. And there's so many different ways to do it now on so many different devices that it is the evolution of, you know, the gaming industry. I mean, does it happen in 5 to 10 years? I would assume so. I would think maybe it happens sooner. What does that do to the gaming landscape? You know, do people download games anymore? Do they pay for subscription services? How does that affect independent developers and publishers? You know, like, I mean, is there the requirement to install like some of the data initially to play the game? Like, I don't know any of that. You know, that's all a lot of technical stuff. But I think that it makes sense if Ubisoft is going to be the one that leads the charge I don't know that either. I think, I mean, what I'd like to see is a world where, like, I don't know, like, realistically, I don't know. All I know is I think this is the route that it's gonna go, and I think we're already seeing that with certain games at certain things, but it really is just a matter of when does it get to the point where it is really the norm. Because I'll even go on a limb and say that while I think it might catch initially, I think there'll be some golden years of it. I think there'll be a height of it, and then it'll taper off. The reason I say that is because when you look at things like Netflix, for a while, Netflix, Hulu, all that was the premier places you go. And now I find myself going back to buying movies so I don't have to get advertisements in the middle of my movie unless I pay for a premium subscription. Like, or if I want to watch a show, I just go directly to the source to watch it instead of watching it on one of these streaming platforms and there's ads integrated. I think that I don't know how that plays into games, but if there's, I feel like something will impede the desire to use these things, whether it be cost increases, whether it be password protection stuff, whether it be glitchiness or faultiness, sporadic connectivity, like a whole number of things, right? I think those are all reasons why people might still want to buy and download a game or go to the store to buy the hard copy data disc to download it. Like, I don't know, it'll just be interesting to see what happens in the next 5 to 10 years. So, our final story of the day comes from VGC. This is written by Jordan Midler. Todd Howard says Starfield was intentionally made to be played for a long time. Starfield director Todd Howard has said that Starfield was intentionally made to be played for a long time. Speaking in a Game Maker's Notebook interview with Insomniac Games CEO Ted Price, he discussed the scale of modern games and explored his intentions for the lifespan of Starfield. Quote, "This is a game that's intentionally made to be played for a long time. One of the things we've learned from our previous games like Skyrim, like Fallout, is that people want to play them for a very long time," said Howard. "How do we build it such that it is allowing that in a way that feels natural? And if people have played the game and finished the main quest, you can see that." Howard here is referring to Starfield open-end New Game Plus system, which has been lauded by players for its creativity and unique nature. Howard was also asked about developers' need to further push themselves as technology evolves in the gaming space. "I think it starts with the developers. It has to, right?" Howard told Price. Quote, "I think it starts with technology. You're seeing new hardware, you want to use it in new ways. You're looking at game demos going, we could do this, we could present it in this way. The scale of games, I think, I'd have to go back and look. How big were things before?" Lastly, he goes on to say, quote, "The one thing I've noticed is that because more games are played for a long time, they're live games. The ability to update them over time creates games that people are playing right now that have been around for a long time, gotten years of updates, and that creates an expectation." When he says this, I think of No Man's Sky. I think of Grand Theft Auto 5. I think of games that have came out a long time ago. They continued to get updates that kept adding to the world and kept making them livable. You immerse yourself in them. You find yourself doing little side quests, still playing certain aspects, role playing, building creativity. And I think when they built Starfield, they thought of these things, and that was the way you keep people involved. There's many different aspects that are going to draw you in, that are going to create this want from you as the player to continue playing, continue exploring, continue navigating this world and find new things continuously. And I mean, just look at the content creator landscape as an example. So many people creating content from this one thing. The really question is how long are some of these people going to be doing this? What new creators come and start doing different things? Only time will tell. But I think games that do this set them up for success in the long term, both from a community building perspective, from a player-based perspective and from a monetary, revenue perspective. So that really is telling. So I wouldn't disagree with this. I think it's interesting. On a sad note, I tried to play, my computer couldn't handle it. Insert sad music. But in any case, it is what it is. So I hope y'all enjoyed the headlines today. This was a fun-filled episode. A lot of great stories. I know we missed some stories from the previous weeks. I do apologize. But in any case, make sure you tune back in this next week for another episode. Tune in for the podcast. Tune in for the Dying Light episode. Story time is coming back. Short form content. Who knows what else Bleep Bloop has for you. But until then, like I always say, peace.